Welcome back to the Oscar Pistorius Trial channel. If you do have questions for the guests, tweet them to us using the hashtag Roundtable199. Let's continue our debate with Advocate Mannie Witz, former Zimbabwean High Court judge and acting judge here in South Africa, Greenland, defense attorney Rudi Krause as well, and I'm correct in saying former prosecutor, am I right, Rudi?
Correct, yes.
See it from all angles. Greenland, during the last session, you distilled this for us. You said, we know who shot whom, it goes to why. Mannie, you spoke about, if we now to explore why, the forensics is all geared towards the why. Another way of exploring the why is getting inside his head, calling a psychiatrist to do that job. I anticipate that surely will happen, given that the police, the state, has their expert psychology, their psychological expert in Gerard Labuskaghni sitting right behind Gerinel. That seems to be the next part of this, the next phase of this.
Yeah, definitely that has to be the next phase. If the defense don't go that route and they don't call that, you're going to have to get somebody who says, look, I know him, I've been with him, I've seen him when he's running in the Olympics, when it's a matter of gold or silver, I've seen him under pressure, I've seen how he reacts, I've seen him under the most extreme pressure, I've seen him yet when he's most vulnerable, when his prostheses aren't on, when he can't do what other people do. That's the kind of thing, and you have to look at his childhood, his background, go into his head and say, well, why did you act like that on that particular night? Was it a mistake? Was it a proper mistake, a genuine mistake, a made-up mistake, or was it intentional? And that's what you really need to get into, and only an expert can help you on that.
What else needs to be shored up? We know that Barry Roux is going to call witnesses who are neighbours, who stay closer to Oscar Pistorius than the witnesses who gave evidence for the state. Will there also be witnesses to talk about the sounds? There was the experiment of the bat hitting the door and the firearm, the gun going off. Is there a ballistics expert still to come? What is your expectation if you were handling a case such as this? What else needs to happen for the defence? Rudi?
Well, I've seen a ballistic expert present in court, well known for a ballistic expert, so I think Barry has also indicated that he intends to call him, so we can safely expect and accept that they will tender that evidence. Barry has also put it to the witnesses that they will in fact call a witness that will be able to give evidence with regard to the acoustics and the noises, the distinction between a male and a female screaming, the distinction between the bat hitting the door and the gunshot. So I think we can safely accept that they will call those witnesses.
Chris?
I think in terms of what has actually happened, what is critical is Oscar and his state of mind, especially when you have regard to his performance under cross-examination about critical stages of the events of the night. And a point that has concerned me is this boating accident.
Yes, that was led in evidence, wasn't it?
If I was defending Oscar, I would have had his head injuries and the sequelae as a result of that injury investigated.
What the consequences?
The consequences thoroughly, because David, I can tell you even from personal experience involving our son, God rest his soul, that when you have that type of head injury and you're in a coma and an induced coma, there is a condition that's sometimes called diexecutive syndrome. And I've seen many attributes looking at Oscar in the witness stand that I can associate with my son. And that syndrome alters your perception of reality, your reaction to threats, your reaction to confrontation, and your reaction generally to situations of stress in a very, very subtle but dangerous way.
Well, that's possibly why we've had that evidence came out in his evidence in chief, that he spoke at length about that and the extent of his injuries.
In other words, if an expert were to tell me now that he suffers from that syndrome because he suffered serious lobe damage, that would explain, to me, it would explain just about everything.
It would support then his version about...
Well, it would support his performance under cross-examination.
Chris, if I can go to another issue and jump in, gentlemen, you've been involved with the experts as well. How does a judge assess the evidence of an expert witness. We're looking at the facts. They'll have the lasers and the rods and everything, and they come to different conclusions. How does a judge then accept one version above another when they themselves are learning this for the first time?
David, I wouldn't presume to be an expert on this. I can only tell you what...
I'm sure you've been in the position where you've had to weigh it up.
Can only tell you what I would do. I'll
Yes, that's
first
what I
take the lay witnesses first, and then identify what the dispute is. Then see to what extent the expert evidence is relevant to their evidence. And then as regards the experts, if I might use Dixon as an example, I'll task the junior member of my assessing team to refer me to all the evidence that he gave, in respect of which he admitted that he was not an expert.
Right.
I put a pencil through that. I'm not going to even look at it for the time being anyway. And then we would identify where the experts are in disagreement. Identify where they're in disagreement. And look at the reasons that each one proffered in support of their conclusions. And see if we can get an agreement on that, in deciding which expert we should believe. And if there's still a tie, we might then resolve it or break the tie by saying, well, what's your impression of this expert? In other words, from the public's point of view, I'll be not that interested in how bad Dixon might have looked. That would be the last consideration. I'll be first interested in the reasons that he's given as an expert. And then we'd break the tie like that.
Would his qualifications be an issue for you? Would you look and say, this person's done so many degrees and so many courses, if you're going to try and look for tiebreakers?
Well, that one's resolved very early in deciding whether he is an expert. We'd resolve that very quickly. And his qualifications go into the pot as regards that.
Okay. Rudi, anything to add on that as in the assessment of expert witness testimony?
No, I agree fully with Chris. It is frequently very difficult for a court to assess the evidence of experts. Although there is ample authority in our law that a court should not always just accept the evidence of experts, the court must still make up his or her own mind in determining the issues before it. And you must also bear in mind that usually expert witnesses are objective witnesses in the sense that they should not have an interest in respect of either one of the parties, and the expert witness should express an objective opinion in that context.
Even a witness who's paid by the defense, Mannie, how does that work? There will always be an inference drawn that because you are being paid by somebody, you're going to say what they want you to say.
I'm surprised Harry didn't do that today. That's normal standard question from the prosecution. They seem to suggest and say to your witness, who employed you, whether it's a social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, who employed you, who's paying your bill. They're not allowed to ask how much, of course.
Yes.
But they sort of suggest that you're slightly biased or maybe more than biased because that's your paymaster, that's who you're paying. And Rudi's correct. An expert must come, an expert must give an objective opinion, etc. But the main problem that I saw in this particular matter, I do a lot of personal injury matters. I work with a lot of the attorneys who do personal injury. So you get somebody that unfortunately gets badly hurt in a motor vehicle accident. It's an orthopedic injury, broken legs, broken bones, etc. And in between they pick up a head injury. The attorney will send them to an orthopedic surgeon. The minute it comes to something to do with the head, the orthopedic surgeon does a report and says, listen, this is out of my field of expertise. I refer you to a neurosurgeon. If you talk about future earnings, loss of income, earning capacity, occupational therapists, industrial psychologists, you call that witness only to deal with his or her particular field. You don't do what happened over here. You call a witness who's probably very good in his particular field, forensic geologist in his particular field. Don't start venturing into ballistics. Then you're opening yourself up to Harry Nell, whoever's prosecuting. An expert must be an expert in his or her particular field and stick to your field and then give, exactly as Rudi and the judge have said, give an independent objective, help the court, assist the court, say, that's my years of experience, those are my qualifications, those are my reasons, and that's why I come to that conclusion. And that's really how you deal with an expert witness. Stick to your expertise.
Chris?
Yeah, just to defend Dixon again, I think that I would not reject him out of hand simply because he was embarrassed in these respects that have been identified by my colleagues. I would still have regard to his evidence where he had expertise. because I won't pillory him for blame for what he did in court. I think that his defense team should not have allowed him to be giving evidence on expertise in which he's not qualified.
Issues of pathology and ballistics.
Yes, I wouldn't give him bad marks for that. I'll still look at his area of expertise, because on that I was quite impressed with his manner and demeanor and the way he presented and the reasons he gave.
Well, it's the interesting point that you've raised about him being the objective witness who's got to assist the court. When I notice the analysis when he agreed with the state's case of where the magazine rack, it was interpreted as a blunder and a gaffe, that he was now contradicting Oscar's version of events.
It's not.
He was being a good witness in terms of the court. The court would have been happy with that.
Of course, he's being honest, he's being objective, and he's saying, well,
according to his findings, that's what it was.
According to my findings and my observations, coupled with my experience and my findings, if that's where the magazine rack was, it doesn't make a difference what Mr. Pistorius said. If that's what I saw and that's what I observed, that's it. I'm objective and I'm here to assist the court, and that's what I think he was trying to get across.
We'll continue this discussion right after this short break.